So, what's happening in Minneapolis right now has just ignited an absolute firestorm. A man was shot and killed by federal agents. But the thing is, there are two completely different, fiercely competing stories about what actually happened. So, today we're going to break down what the evidence really shows. And this is the one tragic, undisputed fact at the heart of this entire thing. An ICU nurse is dead, shot by federal agents during an immigration enforcement operation. That's not in question. The real question is why? Okay, so to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to walk through it. First, we'll look at the shooting itself. Then we're going to dive into those two very different stories being told. After that, we'll see how this one event just spiraled into a massive political firestorm, tapping into all these deep divisions in the country. And finally, we'll talk about the search for truth, right in the middle of all this chaos. All right, so let's set the scene. It all kicked off on a Saturday in Minneapolis. Now, this was happening right in the middle of a major federal immigration crackdown. A U.S. Border Patrol agent shot and killed a man. And what started as this single tragic event, well, it spiraled fast. It put not just the city, but honestly the whole nation on edge. So you have to ask, who was the man at the center of this storm? His name was Alex Preddy. He was a 37-year-old ICU nurse. His whole life was dedicated to caring for people. His family said he was someone who just wanted to help humanity. His neighbors knew him as this warm-hearted caregiver. And when he wasn't working, he was an avid outdoorsman, loved mountain biking. Okay, and this is where the story just gets incredibly complicated. Because depending on who you ask, what happened is told in two completely different ways. You've got the official government account on one side, and on the other, you've got video, footage captured by bystanders. And believe me, the two versions could not be more different. So here's the absolute core of the conflict. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS for short, they're saying their agents fired in self-defense, that Preddy was armed. But then you have news organizations like BBC Verify and MS Now. They dug into those bystander videos. And what they found is that the footage actually contradicts at least 4 of the government's main statements. And how did Alex Preddy's family respond to the official story? Well, his parents were absolutely unequivocal. They called the government's version of events sickening lies. Those words, they just highlight not only their personal agony, but the massive, massive gap between these two stories. And you know what? This battle over the evidence, it's already in the courts. A judge has actually stepped in and blocked the federal government from destroying any evidence related to the shooting. This is a huge legal step, and it really underscores just how high the mistrust is and how critical the fight is to preserve every single piece of information that could tell us what really happened that day. So, as you can probably imagine, this did not stay a local Minneapolis story for long. No way. It immediately erupted into a national political firestorm. Politicians, advocacy groups, everyone started drawing battle lines almost instantly. And the political fallout was swift. Citing this shooting, Senate Democrats came out and said they would flat out oppose funding for the Department of Homeland Security. That's the agency that oversees the Border Patrol. And that raises the stakes incredibly high because this fight could actually lead to a government shutdown. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, many Republicans are framing this completely differently. You have some, like Senator J.D. Vance, suggesting this whole chaos has been engineered. Others are really pushing for a thorough investigation before anyone draws conclusions, pushing back hard on what they see as a total rush to judgment. And just to add another complex layer to all this, the NRA weighed in. Their statement gets right to the Second Amendment. They're basically arguing that, look, even if Preddy was armed, like the government claims, the right to carry a weapon can't be and shouldn't be a death sentence. Back in Minnesota, things on the ground were getting really tense. Protests started breaking out. The governor, Tim Walz, actually demanded that President Trump remove federal agents from the state. And he used some incredibly powerful language, comparing the atmosphere that ICE created to the Holocaust, saying that people were literally hiding in their houses. The concern got so big that even a group of Minnesota CEOs wrote a public letter just urging everyone to de-escalate. To really get why this one shooting ignited such a massive firestorm, you have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This didn't happen in a vacuum, right? It was like dropping a lit match into a powder keg. It landed in a deeply divided America and instantly hit on some of our most sensitive fault lines: immigration, federal power, gun rights, the whole shebang. And the political rhetoric, it reached a total fever pitch when President Trump threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. Now, this is a really old law from 1807, and what it does is it lets the president deploy the U.S. military on American soil to deal with civil unrest.
Just the fact that this was even mentioned, well, it just shows you how incredibly high the tensions had climbed.
So when you boil it all down, this one shooting has become the flashpoint for all these huge national conflicts. You've got the aggressive immigration crackdown, right? Then there's that long-standing fight over federal power versus state power. And, as we just talked about, it's even put the entire government at risk of a shutdown over DHS funding. It's a lot.
So, with all this conflicting information, all this political noise, the central challenge is obvious, right? How do you find out what actually happened? And the calls for real transparency, for a credible investigation, they are just getting louder and louder.
But here's the problem. That search for truth is already hitting some major roadblocks. We're hearing reports that federal officials have actually denied Minnesota's own state investigators access to the evidence. Think about that. When different levels of law enforcement won't cooperate with each other, it makes a truly independent investigation almost impossible. And of course, that just fuels even more public distrust. And all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. In a moment just like this one, when raw video completely contradicts the official story and politics just pours gasoline on every single disagreement, what does the path to justice and truth even look like? It's a huge question, and it's one that not just Minneapolis, but really the entire country is now being forced to confront.